All right, let's start here. U.S. government has hit back at South Africa, accusing the country of harassing its employees. In a statement, the U.S. State Department accuses Pretoria of releasing the passport information of officials who it says were providing humanitarian support to Afrikaners. America says this can be viewed as an act of intimidation and won't be tolerated. The U.S. has threatened serious consequences. Earlier this week, the Department of Home Affairs said 7 Kenyans were found to be working at the processing center without proper documentation. All right, so the South African government has responded to these accusations, and some of which in what they are telling us will be read out to you in just a moment when we get that statement. Maybe let's just start off the conversation with the international relations expert, Dr. Oscar van Heerden, who's joining us now for more reaction on this. Doc, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. So maybe let's just go through the statement that the South African government has now released, and it reads as follows. The recent deportation of 7 Kenyan nationals by the Department of Home Affairs was conducted in strict accordance with the South African immigration law. These individuals were engaged with work without the necessary work permits. The government will not negotiate its sovereignty and the implementation of the rule of law. Separately, we have noted an unsubstantiated allegation regarding the private information of U.S. officials. South Africa treats all matters of data security with the utmost seriousness and operates under stringent legal and diplomatic protocols. We categorically reject any suggestion of state involvement in such actions. Nonetheless, we remain committed to principled and transparent diplomacy. Official channels have been opened, and the U.S. states government to seek clarity on the allegation and to reinforce that our bilateral engagements must be grounded in mutual respect and factual dialogue. So this has been released by the Department of International Relations and Cooperation in response to those accusations by the USA. What's your assessment, Doc, with regards to South Africa's response? And do you believe they've adequately addressed the concerns that have now been raised?
Yes, Katlego. Good evening. I do think that the South African government has responded adequately. There is not a seriousness about this issue, quite frankly. It is no surprise that the United States State Department wants to make a big ruse about this because they were caught having employed Kenyans that were not having the proper documentation. I mean, it's the same kind of thing that the very Trump administration is anti. Illegal immigrants who come into the country of the United States under false pretenses and then want to work within the United States. The Trump administration is deporting such individuals. They are acting very harshly against such people. And now they are expecting South Africa to act differently. If the United States and through their embassy followed the correct procedures, and if these Kenyan nationals had all the proper documentation, there would have been no problem with them proceeding with working for the U.S. in South Africa with the refugee center. But the truth of the matter is none of this is the case. They were found to have the wrong visas, and that's why they've been deported. I would imagine that the U.S. nationals that were also at the refugee center, their passports would obviously have also been checked because it cannot be assumed that they have the right visas and so forth. And so now to come and elevate this and say that they have deliberately released this information and data is just a way of wanting to elevate it for the objective of bringing sanctions against South Africa.
And what does this say about the disregard by USA of South Africa's laws?
No, I mean, it's just unbelievable. South Africa, and in the statement it says that we are a sovereign country. We follow our laws. We have immigration laws, and these must be upheld. And we make no exception to anyone. And so, if the United States could come with an argument that we unreasonably acted against the Kenyans and or their officials, then that would be a completely different situation. But in this particular example, the South African government followed the rules.
You mentioned sanctions earlier. How might this affect future cooperation between the two countries with how we are seeing things playing out at this moment?
Yeah, I'm of the opinion, Katlego, that this is moving towards a particular crescendo. We've seen the constant deterioration, the falsehoods, the lies that are being spread, and so on and so forth by the Trump administration. Then came the 30% tariffs, and so on and so forth. And I think it all leads up to in the new year, we are going to then see the State Department issuing or Trump issuing executive orders that are going to be bringing sanctions, possibly against some of the political parties in South Africa, notably the ANC, possibly the EFF, and so on. And of course, individuals will also be targeted with these targeted sanctions. And those will not only be politicians, as far as I'm concerned. They are going to involve academics, journalists, and so on and so forth. Widespread sanctions are going to be brought against South Africans.
Are there any possibilities of de-escalating these tensions at this moment?
Well, the South African government has tried to de-escalate from the very beginning, as you know, Katlego. I mean, not only was it the presidency who then went there and was embarrassed in the Oval Office, DIRCO has constantly been trying through their ambassador and envoys, and everything is just being shut down, not interested. The DTI, Parks Tau and Steenhuisen in agriculture, who are trying to knock out a bilateral trade agreement. So there has been a lot of effort made in a responsible, mature way from the South African government. But the Trump administration, Marco Rubio, and their ilk are just not interested. And so the question must be asked, what more should the Ramaphosa government do to try and mend the relations with the United States?
And that's a very pertinent question at this point in time with regards to what more can the South African government do. But how much support do you think the South African government needs from the international community in trying to mend this relationship?
Well, I mean, we don't really need anyone's assistance. You know, this is a clear-cut case of a sovereign country that is following its rules and laws and has particular relations internationally and cannot be dictated to. I mean, the kind of things, the demands that the Trump administration is making on the South African government is completely unreasonable. They want us to change our foreign policy choices. They want us to change who we associate and trade with. They want us to change domestic laws because they have interpreted in a particular way, and so on and so forth. No country is going to agree to such demands, because if you do, then you simply become the lapdog of the country, such as the United States. It means every time the Washington says jump, we will have to say how high.
And speaking about being a lapdog to the United States and how we react to some of what they've been throwing to South Africa, do you think that how firm the South African president has been towards America and some of these accusations is really what is fueling the fire with the US president?
He has, President Ramaphosa has been placed in a very insidious situation. On the one hand, he needs to stand firm as the leader of the Republic of South Africa to say we will not be bullied, we will not be cajoled into these unreasonable demands. But at the same time, he also wants to make sure that we have a good diplomatic relations with the United States. After all, you are talking of the #1 economy in the world. We want to have good relations with them. We want to have fair trade with them. But if the United States decides to weaponize trade by slapping tariffs every time they don't agree with what we are doing, then at some point we have to say that we need to look further afield, we need other partners, and so on and so forth.
And looking further afield and some of those other partners obviously won't be something that happens overnight, Doc. I mean, it's going to be quite the transition. And there have been a number of conspiracy theories with regards to Trump's actions, some saying that he's trying to stifle Biden's interests in South Africa, and really it is a fight between them, and South Africa is just caught between these two elephants. how much more should we be looking for in terms of finding other avenues where we're able to, if possible in any way, separate South Africa from some of those trade relations with the US?
I think that the South African government has done a marvelous job in the short term. I think that the visit from President Ramaphosa and Minister Lamola to Indonesia, Malaysia, and to Vietnam, agreeing on free trade agreements with those countries is a step in the right direction. I think the agreement that we made with the Swiss and the kind of money that the Swiss has committed. Of course, there was also commitments made by the European Union in terms of the just transition, energy transition. And of course, we've just recently concluded a very successful bilateral agreement with the United Kingdom. And so on. So, you know, and also the goodwill that came out of the G20 Johannesburg from countries like France, Italy, from Germany, and so forth. I think we are on a good footing. I think that the Trump administration is unfortunately continuing with its isolationist policy. But in this integrated multilateral world, I think that South Africa do have choices and they do have options.
Most certainly. Lastly, just on a broader reflection, Doc, I mean, if we look at South Africa just on the broader implications for diplomacy and sovereignty, talk to us about what you see these developments having an impact, especially when we look at South Africa's apartheid or post-apartheid identity on a global stage.
I think the whole world, Trump is the only one, and his current administration, that refuses to see this. The whole world knows the recent history of South Africa. They know that white and blacks found each other and had reconciliation under the leadership of Mandela. They know that we have a world-class constitution, which our courts and the arms of government of the state upholds in 1996. We have an independent judiciary. We have an independent media. And so the whole world knows this. They know that there is no white genocide. They know that the expropriation of land, when it is required by the state, is a law that exists in most democracies in the world. It is not an exception to South Africa. And so Trump is just spinning these lies because he has a political campaign against South Africa, because South Africa took Israel to the ICC, to the ICJ for genocide in Gaza, and also because we are the junior partner of BRICS. And so for all these wrong reasons, the United States are wanting to come with punitive measures against South Africa. But I do think that the majority of South Africans will stand behind the government and say that we will not be bullied.
Well, most certainly. Dr. van Heerden, thank you so much for your insights and joining us this evening. That is Dr. Oscar van Heerden, an international relations expert, just giving us some insight with regards to those diplomatic issues between South Africa and the United States.